At first I thought it was me, gasping awake from a dream I couldn't remember. My chest heaved, my throat burned with the phantom remnants of some nightmare I could not grasp. But the sound wasn't coming from me. It was slower, wetter, heavier, something dragging itself up from a pair of lungs that did not belong to a living body. Somewhere between a sigh and a growl, a sound that vibrated through the walls and settled into my bones. The house was silent otherwise. The kind of silence that isn't empty, but full of things waiting to be heard. Even the wind outside had paused, leaving the trees unnaturally still, their skeletal branches scratching against the windows like long, thin fingers testing the glass. Shadows of the branches pooled on the floorboards, stretching and twisting with a life of their own. I swallowed hard, trying to ignore it, trying to tell myself it was just my imagination, but I knew better. I froze. My grandmother's voice echoed in my head, sharp and brittle like frost breaking underfoot. If you hear it, do not go looking. Do not speak its name. And whatever you do not let it touch you. The Skudakumooch. I had laughed at the name as a child, imagining some ridiculous monster skulking under my bed or hiding in the dark corners of the attic. Now, lying in the darkness of my own bedroom, I understood. It wasn't a bedtime story. It wasn't a myth. It was a warning, a literal breathing, moving warning. The breathing stopped abruptly. My heart skipped. My body locked into some primal state of awareness. I held my breath, listening for what would happen next. Then came it, a slow, deliberate creaking of the floorboards in the kitchen. Step, pause, step. Step, pause, step. I lived alone. My mind spun, trying to rationalize. Maybe it was the house settling. Maybe an animal had found its way in through a broken window. But the smell stopped me cold before I could convince myself. Damp earth, rotting leaves, metallic copper, like blood. I whispered, "Hello?" Nothing, not even the faintest reply. The silence that followed pressed against my ears like a hand, thick and suffocating. I reached for my phone. Flicker, dead screen, no signal, nothing. Then I saw it, a shadow in the hallway, not cast by the moon, not shaped by any human form. The hallway itself seemed to bend around it, a dense darkness that swallowed the edges of reality, moving with an impossible stutter-step motion. Its arms hung loose and long, dragging against the floorboards with a sickening wet sound. Its head tilted forward, as if falling but never quite hitting. The Skudakumooch. I tried to scream. My throat seized. I tried again. Silent. Grandmother's words returned, whispered like a mantra in my mind. If it touches you, it remembers you forever. Panic broke something in me. I bolted, bare feet slapped against the cold floorboards. I tore down the hallway, stumbled through the mudroom, and burst into the night. The forest waited beyond my backyard, black and endless, the trees thick and oppressive. Moonlight filtered through the birches, silvering their trunks, but the shadows between them seemed unnaturally dark, pooling like ink on the forest floor. I ran blindly. Branches clawed at my arms, tearing my nightshirt. The metallic smell followed me, growing stronger with every step. Behind me, I could hear the shuffle, the slow, grinding, falling forward sound that refused to stop, persistent and patient. Roots reached up like serpents, tripping me. I fell into the damp earth, scraping my palms raw. My chest burned, lungs screaming. I forced myself upright and pressed against a tree, trembling. Silence, too much silence. Even the crickets had vanished. Then I noticed the marks on the trees. Jagged spirals carved deep into bark, sap bleeding out like open wounds. The symbols twisted my stomach. I did not recognize them, but they radiated age, malice, and wrongness. Faces seemed to bulge from the wood. Hollow eyes, slack mouths, skins stretching and twisting as if the trees themselves were alive. I blinked and they were gone. The stories of my childhood flooded back. My grandmother had not just told me about the Skudakumooch, she had told me about the village that vanished generations ago. Families wandering into the forest, never to return. Trails of sickness and death. She had warned me. The creature wore the voices of the dead, using them to lure the living, and then I heard it. My name, whispered softly, sweetly, intimately familiar. My mother's voice. My mother, who had been dead for 12 years. It doesn't just hunt. The Skudakumooch remembers. It wears grief, loss, and secrets like a mask to get closer, to make you trust it before it strikes. I ran again, deeper into the forest. Trees leaned, roots twisted over each other, branches clawed at my face. The smell of rot thickened into a cloud I could taste. My lungs burned, legs screamed, and behind me, the stutter-step shuffle persisted. I stumbled into a hollow, a dip in the earth where the shadows pooled unnaturally. The air was colder here, stiller, pressing against my skin like icy fingers. I froze, my chest heaving, ears straining for any sound besides my own frantic heartbeat. And then I saw them, bones, not animal bones, human, half-buried, gnawed clean, fragments of skulls and ribs sticking out of the earth like grotesque monuments. Some were small, clearly children. Others were adults, twisted in ways that spoke of suffering. My stomach churned. The Skudakumooch had been here for centuries, feeding, waiting, watching. Every disappearing village, every whispered story my grandmother had told, every lost soul, it had consumed them all. A sound made me spin around. At the edge of the hollow, the shadow appeared. It was taller than any human, its limbs bending in angles that should have been impossible. Its arms dragged along the ground, leaving blackened grooves in the dirt. Its head tilted unnaturally, cocking from side to side as if observing me with curiosity. I tried to climb out of the hollow, but my foot slipped on the damp earth. Something brushed my neck, cold, grave cold. A shiver ran down my spine that had nothing to do with the night air. I didn't need to see it. I knew it had touched me, and the knowledge hit me with a terrible clarity. It remembered me now. It knew me. The forest around me shifted. Trees seemed to lean closer, roots writhing like serpents. Shadows deepened, stretching unnaturally, forming shapes that almost, but not quite, looked human. My grandmother's stories weren't just warnings. They were guides to survival. Maps of terror written in whispers and shadows. I ran again blindly. Branches clawed my face, roots tore at my clothes, and the metallic smell of decay and blood thickened, filling my lungs. Behind me, the stutter-step shuffle persisted, relentless, patient, omnipresent. Voices joined the shuffle. Children laughing, women crying, men shouting. Fragments of past victims woven into the forest like a chorus of the damned. My mother's voice called my name again, soft and sweet, coaxing, pulling, trying to lure me closer. My grandmother's warning rattled in my mind, desperate and urgent, clashing with the false comfort of the Skudakumooch's mimicry. I stumbled further, deeper into the woods, the terrain twisting around me. The roots and trees bent, creating impossible pathways, funnels, and traps that seemed alive. My legs burned, my lungs ached, every breath was thick with rot and copper, every step a battle. I remembered the cabin. My grandmother had told me about it when I was a child, though I hadn't understood then. Abandoned, yes, but possibly the only refuge from the forest, from the creature that haunted it. I reached it as the first pale light of dawn began to creep into the forest. The door swung open with unnatural ease, as if it had been waiting for me. Inside, dust coated everything. Sheets shrouded the furniture, and the air hung thick with the smell of decay and time. I wanted to hide. I wanted to scream. Then I saw the shadow again. Outside the window first, looming, bending the light, impossible and fluid. Then inside, the faces of the dead appeared in the corners, twisting and shifting. The villagers, my mother, my grandmother, all staring, waiting. It moved closer, limbs stretching and bending, dragging, the stutter step echoing across the wooden floor. I ran up the stairs into the attic. I slammed the hatch behind me. Silence, absolute silence. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning here. I could hear it outside, watching, breathing, patient. Every sound in the house carried the weight of the forest and the dead. I felt trapped between moments, suspended in terror. Morning came. Pale sunlight seeped through the cracks, filtering into the cabin like weak hope. Birds sang, and the forest outside seemed ordinary again. Too ordinary, as if the nightmare had been a dream. I crept downstairs. No shadow, no presence, only the faint metallic tang lingering in the air. My phone buzzed, the power hummed back to life. Everything returned to normal. I was home, but the back of my neck burned where it had touched me. The Skudakumooch remembered me, and I knew, with the certainty of terror that had burrowed into my bones, that when night fell again, it would return. Leaning, falling, forever hungry, wearing the faces and voices of those I had loved and lost. And this time, I didn't think I would escape. The attic was dim, cloaked in dust motes drifting like tiny spirits in the thin morning light. I pressed my back against the wall, knees pulled tight to my chest. My breathing was ragged, loud in the oppressive quiet, each inhale a reminder that I had survived, for now. But the smell was still there. The metallic, coppery tang of decay clung to me, curling in my nostrils, invading my senses like a warning. Hours, maybe days, time had no meaning. I dared not open the hatch, dared not move a muscle. Every sound from below set my heart into spasms of panic. A floorboard creaking, a whisper, the stutter step that haunted me in the dark. I could imagine it there, somewhere just beyond sight, impossibly long limbs bending and twisting, its head cocking unnaturally. I could almost feel its gaze pressing into my skull. Memories of my grandmother's stories resurfaced. She had described the Skudakumooch as a collector, not just of flesh, but of memory and sorrow. It didn't simply kill, it consumed the essence of those it touched, wearing grief and loss like armor. It could mimic voices, take the mask of loved ones, and trick the living into following it willingly. I remembered how she had described the villagers who vanished. They had thought they were walking towards safety when they were stepping into eternity. I closed my eyes, trying to summon any fragment of reason. Maybe I had been overrun by fear. Maybe it had followed me to the hollow, but had retreated when morning came. But I knew the truth. It remembered me now, my scent, my terror, the taste of my blood. It had me cataloged in its memory, and nothing in this forest could erase that. The first sound of movement made me freeze. Something was dragging across the floorboards below, slow and deliberate. Not a creature of wood or animal, but something inhuman, bending reality around it. I pressed my palms over my ears, willing the sound away, but it penetrated anyway, vibrating through my bones. I imagined the shadows crawling along the walls, spilling into the corners of the attic like ink. I imagined its face, long and featureless, stretching impossibly, wearing the hollowed eyes of the villagers it had consumed, wearing my mother's voice like a lure. My stomach twisted. I had to move. I forced myself to rise, legs stiff and trembling. Each step was agony, each breath a reminder of the forest outside, the hollow of bones, the things that waited. I crept toward the hatch, slowly lifting it. The sunlight from the morning glimmered weakly on the cabin floor. Silence, too perfect, too complete. I stepped down, cautiously, every nerve screaming. The air was heavy, oppressive. The faint smell of copper lingered, stronger now, taunting me. The shadows had retreated, or maybe they had only paused. I found the cabin's main room empty. Dust coated everything, sheets over furniture. The decay smelled less potent in the daylight. For a moment, I let my guard down, telling myself that perhaps I had survived the night. But then I heard it. The faintest whisper, a sound that made my skin crawl. "John," I froze. The voice was soft, intimate, unmistakable. My mother, dead for 12 years. Yet here she was, calling my name, coaxing me forward. The Skudakumooch, always near, always patient, always wearing what it had taken. I bolted for the door. Outside, the forest looked innocent, pale in morning light. Birch trees stood straight, leaves rustling gently. But I knew better. Every tree, every shadow, every root could be hiding it. I ran blindly, deeper into the forest, instincts guiding me past branches that clawed my arms and roots that tore at my feet. The hollow with the bones was behind me now, but I could sense it. The stutter step sound echoed in the distance, relentless, patient, mocking. Every sound carried its signature, a wet, dragging, falling forward rhythm that made my stomach turn. Branches clawed at my hair, scraping my skin raw. The forest seemed alive, bending and twisting to disorient me. Trees leaned in impossible angles, roots rising like serpents to trip me. The smell of rot thickened into a choking haze, metallic and coppery, filling my lungs. I was running through a nightmare that had taken form in reality. I remembered one of the last instructions from my grandmother: never stop moving, never look back, never speak. It will hear you, and it will know you fully if you do. I didn't. I ran. I ran until my legs burned, until my lungs screamed for air, until I stumbled blindly over roots and rocks. Each step carried the weight of centuries, the memories of lost villagers, the echo of voices that should have been gone. And then I saw the cabin again, my grandmother's refuge, but also a trap. Light filtered weakly through its cracks. The door was ajar. I wanted to hide. I wanted to scream, but I was too tired to make a choice. The forest had already decided for me. I slipped inside, breath ragged, heart pounding, dust-covered furniture, sheets over old chairs. The air was heavy, waiting, and then I felt it, the presence. Leaning, falling, watching. Faces of the dead emerged in the corners of the room. Villagers, my mother, my grandmother, all cataloged in the Skudakumooch's memory, all wearing the agony of what it had taken. It moved closer, limbs bending, stretching, stuttering across the floor. The sound vibrated in my chest. I bolted up the stairs, into the attic, and slammed the hatch. Silence. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had no meaning in the attic. My body ached, every joint screaming, but I dared not move. Every sound from below, the creak of a floorboard, the soft whisper of air, the faint stutter step of dragging limbs, made my skin crawl. I was trapped between panic and exhaustion, and the forest beyond seemed to pulse with its own cruel awareness. The smell followed me everywhere, metallic, coppery, like blood seeping from the soil itself. My grandmother's words replayed endlessly in my mind. It remembers. It wears grief like armor. Never stop moving. Never speak. Never let it touch you. I pressed my back to the wall, trembling. The attic hatch was flimsy, but it separated me from the horror below. For a brief moment, I allowed myself a sliver of hope. Maybe it had gone. Maybe daylight had some power over it. Then I heard it. Not the stutter step, not the dragging, not the whispered voices. It was the sound of my own name, soft and coaxing, carried on the air like a lure. John, my mother's voice, sweet, familiar, terrifying. I stumbled backward, almost toppling over the crate I had been hiding behind. It wasn't her. It never was. It was wearing her voice, her grief, the memory of her loss, and I knew the moment I heard it that I had been marked. It had touched me, and from that touch, it remembered everything. I remembered the hollow, the bones, the villagers, the centuries of hunger. I had become a part of its history now. I had to move. I forced myself to rise, legs shaking violently. I crawled to the hatch, lifted it slowly, and peeked down. Sunlight spilled weakly through the cabin windows, but the shadows remained thick, unnatural. I could see it at the edge of the room, just beyond the light, leaning, falling, its arms dragging across the floor, bending at impossible angles. Its shadow stretched and shifted like ink, pooling into the corners, reaching for me. I bolted down the stairs, across the main room, out the door. Outside, the forest seemed normal, bathed in pale morning light, but the stutter step followed me, patient, inevitable. Every branch I tore through, every root I tripped over, every stumble it mirrored. It was relentless, waiting for me to tire, waiting for me to falter. The forest became a labyrinth. Trees bent, roots twisted, shadows lengthened unnaturally. The metallic smell thickened until I could taste it, bitter and coppery on my tongue. I ran blindly, lungs burning, muscles screaming, branches clawing my face and arms. Voices echoed, impossible to disentangle. Children laughing, women crying, villagers whispering my grandmother's warnings, my mother calling my name, all overlapping into a cacophony of terror. I remembered one of the few pieces of advice my grandmother had given me. Never stop, never look back. It cannot catch you if you keep moving, but if it touches you again, it owns you forever. The thought sent adrenaline surging. I ran faster, pushing past roots, branches, rocks, anything in my path. The forest seemed alive, shifting, bending around me. Every moment was agony. Every breath burned. Every heartbeat echoed in the darkness behind the light. And then, just as suddenly, I reached the edge of the forest. The town lay ahead, pale and quiet in the morning haze. The metallic smell began to fade, the whispers dying down. I thought I was free, but the back of my neck burned, a cold, damp touch, grave cold. It had reached me again, even here, at the threshold of the living world, and I knew, with the clarity of unrelenting terror, that it remembered me fully now. My grief, my life, every secret, every sorrow, every loss, it wore them all like masks to stalk me for the rest of my days. I stumbled into my home, safe, or at least I thought so. Power returned, my phone buzzed, everything seemed ordinary. The shadows that clung to the corners of my vision seemed to recede. But I knew better. The Skudakumooch remembers. It remembers everything. And when night falls, when the shadows gather again, it will return. Leaning, falling, forever hungry, wearing the voices of the dead, wearing the memories of those I loved and lost. And this time, I fear there will be nowhere to run. I can feel it already, a whispering at the edge of hearing, a weight pressing against the nape of my neck. A promise, an inevitability. It will come for me again. And when it does, I will know the true meaning of what my grandmother warned me. It never forgets. It never tires. And once it has claimed you, it never lets go. The house feels empty now, but I know it is only pretending. I am not safe, never safe. Not while the Skudakumooch waits in the dark, remembering. And as night descends, as shadows stretch across walls and forest alike, I realize there is no escaping it. Not now, not ever. And I shiver, knowing that I will hear it again tonight, whispering my name, leaning forward, falling, dragging itself toward me, patient and eternal.